Hello and welcome back to PreciseAlgorithmTrading.com. And yes, I'm um, rooting for a bounce, even if it's a short-term bounce or even if it's just a bounce, maybe in the morning and a little bleed off in the afternoon or something like that tomorrow. Um, and I think we're probably in for something like that, but we'll dive into it in a little bit. So let's start with our automated trading system today. And I went ahead and took these screenshots with the dates of the last high equity peak. So you can see the Dow here is trying to come back, and it hasn't had a high equity peak since February 22nd. So I believe we're due. Today's trades, there's just one, and it was a stop loss. The Russell that can't get out of its own way hasn't had an equity peak since February 16th. Although these dates over here um, were, I believe, in March, and they got really close. So, and it only had one trade today, and it was a stop loss. And then this is the new version of the Nasdaq, and this is one of the things. The latest equity peak on this was May 8th, so this is one of the things that I like about this equity curve versus this one. This one hasn't had an equity peak since March 14th, and this one's got a much deeper pullback. So the pullbacks in this are more like $8,000, and again you can see, okay, yeah, this one went to 105, but this one went to 91. So there's a trade-off, and just like everything, today's trades 523 were all stop outs on the muted or the simpler system, and the deeper one had was actually net positive and had one nice bouncy trade there. You can see this is starting to think about getting back up there, and it's likely going to do it inside of a few trades when it does. Um, and that's another thing about this system is if there was a problem with your trading platform and you're in one of these types of moves, you're going to miss a big actual move. Um, this doesn't do it quite as much. I mean, you get these equity peaks more often, so there's less chance for the software to fail you. So that's another good thing about this system versus the other. So they're both fine, but I'm sure leaning this way. All right, sorry about that. We'll go to Thinkorswim and start talking about the markets. The S&P today, so that Nvidia went up nicely overnight. Let's look at that. Nvidia. It did the bounce because of earnings. It was the big news story. And of course, something like that happening, and it's such an obvious move, and everybody would want to jump on board to the whole market, especially the NASDAQ, because that's a big NASDAQ instrument. And what did the whole market do? Well, the NASDAQ went down 0.39%. The S&P went down 0.74%. The Dow went down at 1.53%, or 600 points. That's a big negative day, net negative day in the Dow. And then the Russell went down 1.6%, and transportation index went down 1.59%. So let's go through these charts real quick. For Nvidia, again, my target's up there. Um, and I'm not even in this stock, but because I don't play through earnings like that. But or generally don't. I won't say never, but I've been burned by earnings way too much. So, anyways, I'm just tracking that because that should be where the target gets to. So let's look at the S&P. And how do we want to do this? Let's do it without the overnight for tomorrow. So obviously this is starting its pullback. You can see we got a pretty deep pullback over here on the hourly chart. And that's part of the reason I'm expecting a bounce, because we've got extended down below the Keltner channel on the hourly. And so then the Dow, oh wow, the candle turned gray today, so that means that our moving averages, one of them turned red at least. And we came all the way down to the 618 extension, or the 618 retracement, and check how that bounced right at the 618. So that's just amazing to me how it works like that sometimes. No matter how long I do this, that's an amazing thing that it just stops right there. The Russell also turned gray. And again, this stuff is way kind of extended. That's a big move. Possibly too far too fast. The NASDAQ. So this is wild to me too. That the 1272 extension here, you can see we came up to it, we jumped up through it, and then sold off. These Fibonacci's are just amazing. So is this move over? I don't really think so. Now, can we get more of a pullback before we rise again? Of course we can. We're against the bottom Keltner channel over here, although you can see that we rose by the end of the day. Yeah, let's see. What's the IYT doing? So that thing's below the Keltner channel on the daily even, and we've been going down straight for a while. Probably due for a bounce. This might be one to watch for the initial bounce. Potential head and shoulders pattern to the downside. That'd be rough, because we could draw that same from the top to the neckline and extend it down, and that would go below 60. Now, I would expect it to bounce up back to the mean first before it would ever even roll over there. And if everybody sees a head and shoulders pattern, it's likely not to play out. So, what else? So the overall markets they were due for a pullback. It showed up right when right when you'd expect it. It's counterintuitive. So, what else do I have? I don't want to look at oil yet. Let's look at all these. So here's the VIX. We talked about a bounce in the VIX. There it is. I went ahead and threw all the index products up there, so that we could see the hybrid over here, and you can see we're almost back to the moving averages if you add them all together. Another reason to kind of expect at least some stabilization, probably. I did want to go to here, and let's put it in the S&P. You can see over here on the hourly chart we're also buried and potentially rolling back up again. So, yeah, as far as the stochastics goes, and a bounce at these levels where I've got on the stochastics on the daily might make some sense too. You can see it's happened before. It happens there. So there's no guarantees that this stuff's right, guys. It's kind of what's happened in the past, and if you follow along, if a market moves too far in one direction too fast, then everybody jumps on board to go short, and then the market will take you the other direction. So, and not to mention um, all of the directional plays that are in play for the big banks and everything else are still directional and didn't give up the ship just because of one day. One day doesn't make a new trend normally. Let's put this instrument into this setup, and we can see what when you add them all together, what's that look like. And yesterday we were talking about, in fact, boy, that's all of today's action. Yesterday during the day, we were starting to see some bounce, or maybe it was the day before, and then we did all the sell-off, and now we've just continued. And then even with this, putting that instrument in there, as far as all the ones jammed together, we can kind of see how it's working with the Ichimoku cloud. And so we broke above the cloud, we've pulled back. It would be common to bounce. Let's go look at one. This broke above the cloud, pulled back, and then bounced. This broke above the cloud, pulled back, and then bounced. A little not as clean as when your cloud was bullish here. Your yellow cloud is bullish, red cloud is bearish. So breaking above a red cloud, it's real common for it to come back that hard. We really broke above the yellow cloud and we're pulling back to the red cloud. So trying to see if there's a good example. Anyways, you can kind of get the picture of how this has performed in the past. So, what do you get from that? I'm expecting a bounce at some point here. It's just, however, tomorrow is Friday. So, that being said, and it's Friday before 3-day weekend. So, I'm going to say anything's possible, and halfway through today, tomorrow, the markets may slow down real hard anyway because people are just going to cash it in for the weekend and go. All right, last but not least, the bullish percent indexes. Oh, wait. Let's look at that one first. So the big one, and the one that moves the slowest, that just flipped on May 15th, and it's May 23rd, is still blue here. Pulled up above 50. It needs to get to 52. Yeah, 52, in order to put in an actual point and figure buy signal. So now we're back to 50.66. So it can move around here while the market's actually pretty volatile. So really, don't lose sight of the fact that this thing just flipped, and it is bullish. It's not as bullish as a point and figure buy signal, but it's on a column of X's. And I think there's this chart. Is it here? And the write-up that talks about longest column of columns of staying in a column. So, and most of them are X's, and the shortest columns of staying in a column is the shortest days is columns of O's. So for the most part. So that's kind of important in the scheme of things. So don't lose sight of the fact that the market is generally overall bullish, as far as there's more bullish trades, bullish chart patterns than there are bearish ones, as far as point and figure charting goes. The industrials for the short term one, of course, I say all that, and this is rolled over, but that's just what you need to. And this is the shorter term, faster moving one. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. The NYA also down 1.89%. The transportation index didn't move today. The NASDAQ down 1.46%. The S&P down 1.75%. The S&P 100 down 2.74%. And the NASDAQ 100 could be interesting, up 1.67%. So, yeah, it's confounding enough, except that there's still enough bullishness under the hood that we can't lose sight of, like I say, the big bullish percent indexes. This thing is bullish even though it's on a pullback. Yeah. So I know it's hard to take some days, but you know, that's what trading is. I mean, it's the good news is you have all sorts of options to be able to hedge and whatever else, or you can just sit on your hands, make sure your trends are in the right direction, and let it play out to your stops. And yep, that's it. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Should be interesting, and we'll catch you again probably tomorrow night for a weekend review, and then we'll call it a holiday weekend, and we won't catch you again till after Memorial Day. Take care, good trading, and have a great night.